Damn it. No, I do not look like Leo from Geek Legion of Doom, people.
Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 from 1990, directed by Jeff Burr. Now, I haven't seen any of the 3 original sequels to Texas Chainsaw Massacre until now. I actually bought the third one back on VHS, but it was a region one, a kind of an American one, so I never actually could watch it. And I have just watched it now for the first time. So the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series has had a little bit of a spotty record in regards to continuity. This one kind of ignores the second movie and is instead a sort of direct sequel to the original film. The movie is notable for starring Viggo Mortensen, and you've also got Ken Foree as well. But the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, at least the kind of the original sequels, tended to have some actors that went on to be kind of larger stars later on in their careers. This one, we have Viggo Mortensen. So the movie focuses on this couple that are driving from California through to Florida to kind of take a car somewhere. And they stop off in Texas, end up kind of running afoul of this family of cannibals. That include obviously Leatherface. Along the way they meet Ken Foree's character, who is a kind of a survivalist going in the opposite direction. And now they have to kind of team up to try and fight their way for survival for this rabid family of cannibals. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss what I think works in this movie's favour. Now this is a movie that is a sequel, but sort of somewhat follows the same template as the original movie. So it's one of these films where it's sort of the same story more or less again, to be honest with you. So although this is the positive and the negative, on the positive side it's kind of more of the same what you're going to expect. Admittedly, this is obviously a 1990 movie, so it has a little bit more of a modern polish to it. Well, you know, for 1990 at the very least, compared to obviously the more grassroots version of the original, so to speak. So it has a little bit more of a, a production value to it. I mean, the production was somewhat troubled. The director was fired and then rehired. There was various cuts that had to be made. But I think the actual overall product is a fairly sort of, somewhat slickly produced movie. At least in its kind of presentation, it looks like it's kind of relatively kind of well filmed and things like that. There's a lot of scenes that are in the night, but I think they still kind of you can see more or less what's kind of going on and things like this. The production design, I think, looks all good. There's some great set design here. The opening, I have to say, where we have our couple driving past this crime scene that is, hinted that it's other victims of obviously this family. There's like so there's 40 to 50 kind of corpses. It's pretty disturbing stuff, and I have to say it's treated very seriously. So I think kind of sets the stage pretty well for the events to kind of follow. Then we're going to get to this house. I mean, there's, for example, there's a young child that lives there, this young girl, and her room is like full of bones. It's pretty, it's well kind of decorated in regards to the sets and things like this. So I have to say this kind of movie looks pretty good on that sort of front. As I say, you've got a couple of recognisable actors here. I think the acting, for this kind of movie, it's all fine. Everyone does a decent enough job. I mean, no one's asked to kind of do any real heavy lifting here, but everyone does a job of kind of making these kind of crazy Texan characters seem unhinged and stuff. I mean, you could arguably say that every kind of character that seems to be from this area seems to be an absolute lunatic, and there's never really ever a character that doesn't seem like that, but they all kind of play crazy pretty well compared to our protagonists' more grounded sort of characters. I think Ken Foree especially shines here as a very likeable kind of protagonist in the form of Benny, who is this kind of survivalist, this weekend warrior type who wants to kind of put his training to the test, so to speak, and he makes for a likeable kind of character. The movie, I think, has a reasonable amount of tension and it kind of builds up. It actually takes a little while to get going. And again, that's a double-edged sword, but I do think on the plus side, it adds to a kind of a decent build-up, of introducing this kind of family and this kind of like the layering of how much trouble this kind of couple are actually in. And as I say, I kind of quite like the kind of the setup of this kind of this also showing how many victims this family might have gotten through and stuff. It makes them feel, pretty invincible, I have to say. And if you cross paths with them, you're kind of dead meat. There's some kind of stylistic choices here, like Leatherface's kind of new chainsaw. I mean, it's all bright and new and looks a little impractical in regards to an actual chainsaw. It's more of a design choice more than anything else. Maybe it's a little unrealistic, but it adds a little of a stylistic flair here and there. And our family of lunatics, I think, make for an interesting kind of bunch of kind of characters. What doesn't work is, I think, maybe our protagonists lack that. Not so much Ken Foray's character, who I think is probably the standout here in regards to our protagonists, but our two main characters that we are following aren't particularly likeable or interesting sort of characters, and really sort of just a generic kind of couple. So they don't really sort of stand out in any particular way. It's particularly when you compare this to obviously the original movie, where I think the characters of that really sort of stood out a lot more and felt like more real people and things like this. So not necessarily bad acting, but just kind of unmemorable in regards to characters and or any kind of discerning kind of personality traits or anything like that. As I've mentioned, the movie kind of feels like more of the same. It doesn't really feel like it's doing anything too different here. I mean, maybe you could arguably say the second and fourth movie might be more like that, but this one is kind of, the story-wise at the very least, very, very sort of similar to the original movie. And it's kind of again, I've alluded to it. It's like this kind of group of lunatics. I mean, where have they come from and things like this. Again, it's very little is actually information is given about these kind of people and this, who are they and things like that. The movie has suffered from a variety of cuts, and some of the editing seems a little jarring at times. Apparently they just couldn't get this through to the censors, and it had various cuts had to be made, and some of the footage was lost. So the movie feels a little choppy in regards to some of its sort of editing choices and things like this. I think maybe a lot of this is filmed in night, and I think maybe there's a little bit too many night scenes. So the movie always has, I mean, you can kind of see what's going on, but it is always dark for the good majority of time. And I think although I appreciate the build-up here, arguably you could say for a kind of a slasher movie, it maybe takes a little bit too long to kind of really get going. The first kill isn't to the good really way through the movie, and maybe you could arguably also say that you needed a few more kind of protagonists or victims or people to kind of like for our family to kind of go up against, because there's precious few in this movie. So the movie itself, I think, runs at a fairly average mark for me. I mean, it's not a bad film. I think it's watchable. It's certainly an okay entry into this kind of franchise, but it doesn't really stick its head above a parapet and make any kind of real name for itself as a sort of a standout in any way. And as such, it's very much an average film, an average kind of slasher movie, and therefore you can probably guess what I'm going to say. It's going to be a 5 out of 10. What were your thoughts if you've seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Anime Lisa Loves thinks subscribing is a great idea.